There is a city buried in central Turkey. No gates, no streets, no doors anywhere on its walls. To get inside, you climbed onto the roof and dropped through a hole in the ceiling. 8,000 people did this, every day, for over 1,000 years. And then they left, all of them, and nobody came back. We think we know how civilization works. Small bands became villages. Villages grew hierarchies. Hierarchies built cities. Kings at the top, farmers at the bottom, priests somewhere in between. That is the story we tell. Çatalhöyük does not fit it. It existed 2,000 years before the first cities of Mesopotamia. 8,000 people, one place, no rulers, no temples, no rich neighborhood and no poor one. If that worked, and it did for over a millennium, then everything we assume about why civilization needs hierarchy might need another look. In 1958, the Konya Plain in south-central Turkey looked the way it had looked for thousands of years. Flat, dry, the kind of place that discourages curiosity. A few low mounds broke the horizon here and there, the usual lumps of history that farmers plow around and locals name but rarely examine. One of them, about 140 kilometers southeast of Konya, was larger than the rest. It sat in two connected humps, surrounded by what had once been a riverbed, now dust. Nobody had dug it. Nobody had looked twice. Not yet. James Mellart was 33 and looking for Neolithic settlements. He was working for the British Institute of Archaeology in Ankara. He had a theory that the origins of settled life ran through Anatolia, not just through the Levant and the Fertile Crescent, the way most of his colleagues believed. He was surveying on foot. He found the mound, picked up pottery from the surface, realized it was very old. He came back the next year, and the year after that. In 1961, he started digging. The first thing that confused the excavators was the walls. Layer after layer of plastered mud brick, painted white, some still holding color after 9,000 years. Below the first occupation level, another. Below that, another. Mellart's team eventually counted 18 separate levels stacked on top of each other, each generation building directly over the last. Continuous habitation from roughly 7,400 BCE to around 5,700 BCE. 1,700 years at one location without a break. The scale of it took time to absorb. As more of the site came up, the layout made no sense. No streets, no alleyways, no paths of any kind. The houses were built directly against each other, sharing walls, forming one continuous mass of mud brick you could walk across the top of like a platform. The only way in was through the roof. Every house had a hole in the ceiling and a wooden ladder. You climbed out, crossed your neighbor's roof, found your own hole, climbed down. This was not a flaw in the plan. This was the plan. And it stayed this way for the entire 1,700 years. Inside, the rooms were consistent to a degree that struck the excavators as almost deliberate. A main space, roughly the size of a large bedroom, plastered white and replastered again and again. Some walls showing over 100 layers, each one a repainting, a renewal. A raised platform along the north wall for sleeping. A hearth and oven cut into the floor. Storage bins in the walls. The floors were swept obsessively clean. Almost no debris inside the houses. Everything ordered. Everything in its place. And beneath the sleeping platform, in many of the rooms, there were bodies. Not outside the city, not in a cemetery across the river. Beneath the floor of the same room where the family cooked and slept.
The dead were buried directly under the platforms where the living rested. In some houses, generation after generation, dozens of individuals over centuries. knees drawn to the chest, tightly flexed. Some painted with red ochre before burial. Some buried, then exhumed, then reburied somewhere else. And, in a number of cases, the skull removed entirely after decomposition. Kept, passed to another household. What happened to it after that, we don't know. The walls were not just white. In certain rooms, the ones archaeologists eventually called history houses, the plaster was covered in paintings. Bulls, mostly. Enormous bulls surrounded by tiny running humans, the figures barely reaching the animal's shoulder. The same deer hunt repainted on the same wall, decade after decade, generation after generation. Geometric patterns, lozenges, chevrons, handprints in red. And then, something harder to explain. Headless human bodies, painted in outline, surrounded by descending vultures. The same image across multiple rooms, across centuries. The best interpretation involves sky burial, leaving the dead exposed before collecting the bones, but that is still a guess. Beyond the paintings, into the plaster of many walls, the inhabitants pressed actual bull skulls, horns first, pointing into the room. Some rooms had several. Some had been replastered around over time, the horns still visible through the surface like something pushing through. Leopard reliefs on opposite walls, pairs of spotted cats facing each other across the room. Female figurines found throughout the site, some seated between large animals. Objects that held meaning across 40 generations of continuous use. None of it resolves cleanly into anything we can call a religion. But it was not nothing. 60 years of excavation, and the social picture at Çatalhöyük is clear. No palace, no temple precinct, no administrative center.
No storage building that suggests anyone controlled anyone else's food. The houses are the same size. The objects inside them, obsidian blades, bone tools, pottery, animal bones, are roughly equivalent across the site. Isotope analysis of the skeletons shows consistent diets. No burial stands out as wealthy enough to separate its occupant from the rest. No weapons stockpile. No mass graves. If someone was running things, they left nothing behind. The question archaeologists argue about is what held 8,000 people together without visible authority. The leading answer is ritual. The history houses, more elaborate paintings, more skulls, more burials than a single family would generate, seem to have been gathering points for larger networks of people. Extended groups came together in these rooms for ceremonies we cannot reconstruct in full. The skulls circulating between households may have been a form of social bond, connecting the living to their dead and to each other across the city. Shared belief, repeated and maintained, may have done the work that law and enforcement do elsewhere. That is not a comfortable thought. It means power does not have to look the way we expect. One thing that probably made this scale possible was obsidian. Volcanic glass from Mount Hassan, 140 kilometers to the north, produced the sharpest cutting edge available anywhere in the Neolithic world. Sharper than flint, sharper than anything until metal arrived. Çatalhöyük sat on the routes that moved obsidian west into Europe and south into the Levant. Workshops have been found throughout the site. The inhabitants were not just using obsidian, they were knapping it, finishing it, distributing it. The city may have functioned in part as a production center for the most valuable cutting technology of its time. Consider what else existed in 7000 BCE. Jericho had perhaps 2,000 people, and even that number is contested. Most of the world's population lived in farming villages of a few dozen to a few hundred. The city-states of Mesopotamia were 2,000 years away. The pyramids were 4,000 years away. And here, on a dry plain in Anatolia, 8,000 people were living in a single connected structure.
running something that looks like urban life by every meaningful definition, without any of the institutions we assume urban life requires. Day to day, life at Çatalhöyük was in many ways ordinary. Wheat, barley, peas, sheep and goats, aurochs hunted in the surrounding landscape, grain processed on grinding stones with enough repetition that many skeletons show worn knee joints from kneeling to grind, hours a day, every day, for decades. Pottery, baskets, trade. But one thing was unusual. Isotope analysis of teeth suggests most people were born at Çatalhöyük and died there, without extended absence. In a world still largely mobile, that degree of attachment to a single place was rare. Around 6200 BCE, things started to change. The upper levels of the site show it plainly. Walls thinner, rooms smaller, paintings less frequent, less detailed. The history houses lose their central position in the community. Obsidian workshops go quiet. Pollen records from the region show the landscape drying, forests pulling back from the surrounding hills, replaced by the steppe that covers the area today. The land was changing. 8,000 people needed a lot from it. The most direct explanation is environmental. Central Anatolia became significantly drier between 6500 and 5500 BCE. Forests receded, game populations fell, rivers feeding the surrounding wetlands shrank. A Neolithic agricultural community at this scale had very little room for error. A few bad harvests in a row, a drought that runs 2 years instead of 1, a collapse in the local herds. Any of those, and the calculation changes. The people did not vanish. Smaller settlements appear across the surrounding region in the centuries after the main site goes dark. The city broke apart, and the pieces scattered outward. A second theory goes further and argues the social structure was inherently fragile, not despite having no hierarchy, but because of it. A community held together by ritual and shared obligation has no institutional mechanism for resolving disputes at scale. When the rituals lose their force, through stress or drift or simple time, there is nothing structural left to hold things together. The argument is not that egalitarian societies fail. It is that they require continuous maintenance. Everyone has to keep choosing the shared belief every generation without the coercive fallback that authority provides. Over 1,000 years, that is a lot to ask. The third reading flips the frame entirely. Maybe Çatalhöyük did not fail. Maybe it succeeded past the point where one location could hold it. Genetic and archaeological evidence shows Anatolian populations moving into Europe and the Levant across exactly this period. The house forms, the burial patterns, the symbolic vocabulary, they show up in settlements across the region in the centuries after Çatalhöyük's peak. What looks like collapse from one angle looks like dispersal from another. The city dissolved into the wider world, and some of what dissolved may have carried something forward into the first cities of Mesopotamia. The skeletal record is one of the richest aspects of the site. Over 400 individuals analyzed. The findings keep pointing in the same direction. Male and female skeletons show similar physical stress markers. Both sexes ground grain. Both did heavy work. Women were not buried with fewer goods or less care than men.
There are no skeletons showing signs of organized violence in any significant number, and the teeth confirm what everything else suggests. Consistent diets across the whole site, across the whole occupation. Whatever inequalities existed at Çatalhöyük, they did not show up in the food. 60 years of excavation, thousands of published reports, millions of analyzed artifacts, and still, we do not know what language they spoke. We do not know what they called themselves or what name they gave the city,
or whether they had a concept of it as a city at all. We do not know what the rituals were in any specific sense. We do not know what the circulating skulls meant to the people who passed them. The site keeps producing things that don't fit the existing picture. Each season raises new questions faster than it closes old ones. Çatalhöyük lasted somewhere between 11 and 1200 years. The Roman Empire, at its height, held together for roughly 500. The United States is 250 years old. The Ottoman Empire managed 600. Whatever combination of shared belief, practical interdependence, and accumulated habit kept 8,000 people in one place without kings or walls or courts, it outlasted nearly every political structure the modern world calls durable. That is not a minor fact. The question researchers keep coming back to is not why Çatalhöyük ended. Everything ends. The question is how it lasted as long as it did, and what that means for the assumptions we carry about human nature. We tend to treat hierarchy as inevitable, something that emerges from any group past a certain size, the way pressure creates heat. Çatalhöyük suggests that assumption is worth holding more loosely. Not because one site from 9,000 years ago proves anything, but because it happened, and things that happened are possible.
Excavations have covered maybe 5% of the site. The other 95% is still down there. The floors, the burials, the paintings, the objects. Whatever is still waiting in the lower levels. Most of what Çatalhöyük has to say has not been heard yet. If you want to follow what comes up next, the link is below. See you in the next one.